So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
Do you use emojis when you text? Maybe a little too much? Do your friends get annoyed with you because of it? Or maybe you have a friend who somehow feels like no text is complete without like 6 emojis, even if it's the same one repeated 6 times. Maybe emojis are too old school for you. Right? Now it's GIFs. GIFs? GIFs. It's GIFs. 2-second clips of a celebrity are the main method of communication for these people. And sometimes it can be too much. But at other times, I think they're kind of fun, and I kind of like them. Emojis and GIFs have helped me communicate what I am feeling in ways that words can't. And let me explain by telling you some of my most used emojis. First is the laughing tear face. I use this one a lot, even when something is only mildly funny, right? Maybe this is disingenuous, but it's easier than typing H-A-H-A-H-A, right? And I can't be the only one that does that, right? Or how about the grimace face? I like this one because it has multiple uses. You can send it when something is awkward. You can send it when something is painful. And you can send it when something is painfully awkward. And I can also send it to my wife when I'm late getting home from work. Let's move on to the next one. How about the winking face with the stuck-out tongue or the cross-eyed goofy face with the stuck-out tongue? These show up in my texts when I'm trying to be funny. Trying is the key word there. Or when I want to make sure the person I'm texting understands that I'm joking. Sarcasm can be hard to detect in a text sometimes. And that's what's great about emojis, right? Is they help us talk about how we feel without having to use words. And there are a few emojis that I don't use often, but when I do, they're fairly significant. And these set the stage for what we're going to be talking about today. It's these emojis. The face with no mouth, the face with an open mouth, and the face with open mouth and raised eyebrows. We've all had those situations where we're like, I have no words for this. We're shocked. It's when we hear about something or something happens that we can't make sense of, right? And we're speechless. Our mouth is just left hanging open with no sounds coming out. I'd guess that most of the time, these emojis are sent along with a text that reports something happening that was shocking in a bad way. Something that catches us off guard and hits us out of nowhere. It just blindsides us. And that's what we're talking about today. I mean, have you ever experienced anything in your life like that? Something that simply rocked your world, caught you off guard, made you feel uncertain about life, or caused you a lot of hurt? Maybe you felt this way when you got the news that your parents were splitting up, and you had no idea that things were even that bad with them. Maybe a friend had something mean to say about you, and they texted it to you on accident, and you knew right away that it was meant for someone else. Maybe you felt this way when your mom and dad told your family you were going to have to move because the job was changing. Maybe you felt this way when you experienced an injury in the beginning of your sports season, or maybe you didn't make the team at all. Maybe you got dumped. Maybe you got a rejection letter from the college you were dreaming of attending, or you got a test score that's going to make it really hard to get into that college that you want to go to. Maybe you had half of your senior year canceled, including prom and graduation, because of a global pandemic. Sorry, seniors. We love you. Unfortunately, this list could go on a lot longer. There are many things in life that can blindside us and give us that shock factor. And if you haven't experienced something like that yet, just wait. It will happen. The thing about these shockingly painful moments is that they often hit us out of nowhere. And because of that, it's difficult for us to know how they'll make us feel. And because of that, it's difficult for us to know how we'll respond. And sometimes in those moments, we surprise ourselves, right? By how we handle it. We in a good way, right? We think, wow, I figured news like that would be a lot more shocking and a lot harder to take. But I'm actually doing okay. Other times, we surprise ourselves by how much it tears us apart. And we think, I don't even know why I'm so upset about this, but I'm a mess right now. And sometimes we feel closer to God when stuff rocks us, right? But other times we wonder, where is God at all? And because we're all wired differently, we experience hurt differently. But that doesn't change the fact that hurt hurts. And when life hurts, we all find ourselves wondering what to do next. And that's why we're doing this series, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. Because we all encounter those no words emoji moments. And so did Joseph. We began this series talking about his family last week, and this week his story continues in a way that can only be described as... Joseph was one of the most well-known people in the Old Testament of the Bible. He's even had his own Broadway show, right? But in his real life, he had some family drama. Drama he definitely played a part in creating. And he was his dad's favorite child, and therefore he was given special treatment compared to his brothers, all 10 of them. And on top of that, he had a couple of dreams where his brothers, and even his parents, bowed down to him as if he was their king. And because Joseph, seemed to have a hard time picking up on social clues, he shared these dreams with his family. Not a wise choice. You can imagine how that went over. His brothers were not okay with him being their dad's favorite. And his brothers were not okay with him sharing his dreams of ruling over them one day. So how did they respond? Well, one day Jacob sent Joseph out to check on his brothers who were taking care of the sheep. The fact that he was the only one who got to stay home instead of searching hundreds of miles for pasture probably didn't make his brothers too happy. So check out Genesis 37 and how things went down when he finally found his brothers. It says this in Genesis 37 verse 18, "But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him." Okay, that just went from 0 to 100 really quickly. But wait, there's more. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Man, that's pretty harsh. It's pretty clear what they think of Joseph, right? And despite their anger towards him, one of his brothers, Reuben, actually had a conscience in the moment. In verses 21 and 22, it says that when Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. Thank God for Reuben. He convinced his brothers to throw Joseph into a well instead of going homicidal on him. And he even planned on coming back to rescue Joseph later. And the brothers listened to Reuben. And when Joseph approached, they ripped off the special coat his father had given him, and they threw him in the well. If Joseph had a phone, this is when he would have texted his best friend this. Or if he was more of a GIF guy, maybe this would have been included. But they're still not done with him. This part of the story, this part of Joseph's story, isn't over. So as they were sitting there eating their lunch, they noticed a caravan of traders approaching. Merchants that were moving goods from one area of the country at the time to another. And Judah, another one of Joseph's brothers, suggests that they sell Joseph to these traders. After all, selling Joseph into slavery is much better than murdering him, right? Plus, they get a little extra cash. So that's exactly what they do. And they dip Joseph's coat in the blood of a slaughtered goat, take it to their father, and tell him that Joseph was likely attacked and killed by an animal. What a cover story. Genesis 37 verse 32 says that they took the ornate robe back to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." Now that last line tells us everything we need to know about their motivation and about the situation. The brothers obviously knew that the coat belonged to Joseph, and they brought it up to let their dad know that they noticed the way he favored Joseph, and they were mad about it. They didn't call it Joseph's robe or our brother's robe. They said, "Your son's robe." What a bunch of jealous jerks, man. And Joseph's next text, sitting there in the well, would have been this. Now, as I think about it, if he was sitting in the well with a cell phone, why wouldn't he just call 911? I'm messing. I'm being a bit lighthearted with it all. But there was nothing lighthearted about his situation, this real-life situation for Joseph. We simply cannot imagine the fear, despair, uncertainty, anger, and hurt that he felt. Betrayed by his own flesh and blood, sold into a very real slavery by the brothers that he grew up with. And the message being sent was loud and clear. We are all better off without you, Joseph. I mean, what would you even do? What could you do to get yourself out of that situation? And this was clearly a what do you do when you don't know what to do moment. And our stories are different than Joseph's, but we will all experience pain of some kind. We'll all have scary, painful, or dangerous moments that can catch us off guard and blindside us. We'll all have moments when life doesn't make sense and we don't have the words to process what's happening. And unfortunately for Joseph, he had more shocking moments in his future. We'll look at some of those in the next few weeks here as part of this series, but I want to highlight 5 powerful words that show up in this historical account of his life. These 5 words literally made all the difference and helped Joseph maybe more than anything else in his situation. And they come from Genesis chapter 39, the first part of verse 2. These 5 words are, "The Lord was with Joseph." Joseph didn't have a lot going on for him in the pit, and even less afterward. But when Joseph was in despair and wondering how life would turn out, he could rely on a single truth. God was with him. And this truth didn't change the reality of Joseph's situation, but it was better than being alone. And this truth didn't mean that Joseph could see where the story was going, but he could know that he wasn't entirely dependent on himself to get out of this situation. And this truth didn't mean that Joseph could easily deal with the things that he was going through. It didn't mean that he had a reason or an explanation for why this pain was happening. But he didn't have to figure out things all by himself. And the same is true for you. When there's nothing you can do, God is with you. When life hands you shocking news and you don't know what to do, God is with you. Maybe if you've grown up in the church, you've heard that a lot. And so sometimes those words can sort of lose their meaning, or at least the impact, right? But think about it for a second. God is with you. Not in some abstract way that we can't really understand or isn't tangible to us, but he is literally present, near you, next to you, when you feel alone. This is something we talked about a few weeks ago as part of our Easter series, so I encourage you to go back and look that up. But when you and I can truly understand and embrace this truth, it changes things. Our circumstances may not change. After all, Joseph wasn't immediately returned to his family, but it changes our perspective on our situation. And maybe more than anything, it gives us hope that we can keep going even when we feel like we can't. Knowing that God is with us may not change our circumstances, but it can change us. It can give us enough hope to keep going, even in the midst of our hopeless circumstances. You know, it's easy to give into the hurt we've experienced. It's easy to let fear overwhelm us or anger us and let that anger consume us. And, you know, we have a lot of reasons to let difficult and sometimes unfair situations get the last word. But when we know that God is with us, the uncertainty of life doesn't get the last word. God does. What does that look like for us? I mean, there are no formulas or easy answers for getting through hard times. But here are some things to do in the meantime. Number one, be real. Feel your feelings. Life isn't always happy, and it's okay to allow yourself to go through the emotional ups and downs of life. You know, it's not happy all the time for anyone. And everyone will go through tough times of pain and hurt. I mean, all throughout the Bible, people went through difficulties. And there are many accounts of them being real and honest with God about their struggles. See the Psalms for examples. And in fact, the biblical authors want us to see that the heroes they write about are not perfect. They struggle and have faults and flaws too, just like you and me. But many of them trust in God and trust that He is with them in the midst of those struggles. And you know, there are no cliches to make the hard times go away. And our job isn't to just act like everything is okay, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and move on. I mean, honestly, that only makes things worse. If we believe that God is with us, then we should know that God is more than okay with our honest questions, doubts, and fears. And He is more than capable of walking with us through whatever it is we're going through. And this reminds me of a particular poem that's pretty popular, and you've probably heard it before, but it's called Footprints in the Sand, and I'd like to read it for you. It says this: "One night I dreamed a dream. As I was walking along the beach with my Lord, across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed 2 sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only 1 set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only 1 set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me." He whispered, "My precious child, I love you and will never leave you, never ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only 1 set of footprints, it was then that I carried you." So, be real with God. He's there with you. He's walking alongside you, carrying you when necessary, which is probably more often than we realize. The second thing we can do is to remind yourself and others that God is with you. Here's a spoiler alert. God ended up blessing Joseph and using his situation to bring about great good. We know that because we can read the whole story in the Bible. And in fact, I challenge you to read the entire story of Joseph's life in Genesis 37, Genesis chapter 37 through 50. Do that in one sitting, okay? And highlight all the places that you see God was with him. You'll be amazed. It's really cool. It's kind of a lot to read all at once, but do it in one sitting and you'll see the whole story and you'll see how much God was with him. But the fact is, when Joseph was in the middle of the story, he didn't know how it would turn out. He couldn't just turn the page and read to the end. There were no spoiler alerts for him. All he could do is face another day wondering how things would turn out. But he held on to one thing. That was God with him. In moments when life is toughest, God was carrying him. So for you and I, trust that God is with you, and trust that your story isn't over yet. God is still working, and he's writing a new chapter for you through whatever it is you're going through. Guys, our life will be full of moments when we don't know what to do about our pain. We'll want to insert the shocked face emoji or a GIF of some sort. How cool would that be if we could just make those pop up next to our heads or something as we're going throughout life? It'd be kind of fun. But anyways, I digress. In those moments, nobody wants to be alone. Nobody. And it's important to know that when you don't know what to do, God is with you. And we would like to be with you too. So reach out to us. Look in the description for our contact information, social media and stuff of how you can get a hold of us. We'll connect you with someone who can be there for you in some way, for what you need. That is part of our mission, part of our goal here at Moses Lake Alliance Church. When you reach out, when you trust God, when you understand that he is with you even in the midst of the hard times, it gives you a hope when things feel hopeless. It won't make the difficult circumstances go away, but you will have something to count on. You will have someone to count on. And you will know that you are not alone through it all. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.